Hey everybody, Larry, Fort Worth Memories Museum and Group and Hometown Heroes. It is Tuesday at 10 o'clock, so it's Hometown Heroes Day.
Hometown Heroes, episode 13.
Episode
Wow.
13. Wow,
Yeah.
that is
Who knew?
exciting.
It's a big day.
It is.
Just 13 episodes ago, you had Mary and myself down here, and we were kind of talking about doing this.
Yes.
So now we're here, but it's also another special day because somebody here has a birthday.
Who is that?
Dusty,
Dusty.
come around here. Huh?
Hey, I actually saw him fishing. But was that part of your birthday present?
Yeah, come around here.
Uh-huh.
This
Happy birthday.
is Dusty, and it's Big 40 years
Oh,
old,
my
goodness.
which means that I'm pretty old.
You don't look but 25.
So everybody out there today, just go down in the comments and wish Dusty happy birthday.
Aw.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
Dusty.
I'd sing for you, but I don't have a very good voice. So.
We had a great roll call meeting. We had
We
Lucky
did,
yeah.
Luckadoo,
Yes.
100 years old,
Yes.
B-17 pilot.
Yes, he was amazing.
He was.
He just
amazing.
got right up there. It's such a good speaker.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Think about it, 100 years old, and he was standing behind the podium the whole time, just telling stories,
Yes.
even did question and answer. At one point I had to say, okay, we can't take any more because we're getting really late. And he brought like 3 boxes of books
Sold them all.
and sold when he got to the end, because he signed every book. People waited in line. He signed books. And when he finished, he looked up and the line was gone finally, and he was done signing books, and he said, we sold them all? And I said, yeah, we sold them
What was he
all.
now? What was his background?
A
Pilot.
B-17 pilot
Yeah.
in Europe.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And he,
Yeah.
I don't remember how many missions, but
25, I think.
25,
he said. The
which is a
average was
lot.
4 that
Yeah.
anybody could survive. He
Right.
put a picture up on the screen of the plane and was using the pointer on the clicker to point out
So, I
different
know.
parts of the plane. And he told
Amazing.
he told the
Amazing.
story about what he was trained to do. And then the first mission they go out on, they put him in the tail and have him shooting. It was really, we got to get him on here.
We
He
do.
was
We
absolutely
do.
something.
Yeah, that
Another
would be
exciting
good.
thing we did was Saturday. We took 5 of our veterans, World War II veterans, down to Omaha's surplus, down on Whitmore. They used to be on, well, they're kind of still on White Summit Road, but they had
You
went
got
on
to
the
go in the
bridge.
back
Yeah.
entrance.
Yeah.
But anyway, before COVID, we would do that, every year, take them down there, have coffee and donuts, and let them visit with the customers. And this year we did the same thing. So just a big shout out to the Williams family for
Brad
having us down
Williams
there.
and- Yeah.
And Brad and Charlie, they're
Was
great.
Charlie there?
Yes, sir. They're great sponsors of Roll Call, and certainly honor our veterans.
Sure.
And even like for the, I think for the Sky Ball, they have a display of boots, their combat boots, and the good folks down there at Omaha supplies those combat boots. So
Mm.
they really, serve our veterans community. And then Saturday night, Dusty and Tyler and I went along with Don Graves. He wasn't speaking or singing, but we went to the Special Operations Warriors Gala over in Dallas, and we got there early because I was taking pictures. And so I had Don kind of sitting in this big room, and then in walks Cole Hauser. Cole
Wow.
Hauser is Rip on Yellowstone, and somebody said this Iwo Jima guy. Cole and his wife Cynthia came right over there, and he said, "Sir, I've got to talk to you. My grandfather was on Iwo Jima."
Wow.
So they had a good time. Ferry J. Smith, that plays Lloyd on Yellowstone, he was there. Emmett Smith was sitting at the table next to Don. And then we had a Medal of Honor recipient, Matt, he's an Army guy, Matt Williams.
Wow.
And so it was a
Nice.
big
That's a
night.
special deal.
They raised
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then, of course, they recognized Don, and they had a standing ovation. Probably 300 or 400 people stood up
Great.
and clapped. So,
Nice.
but that was exciting. We've got a lot of exciting things coming up in the veteran community this fall. Just a lot of stuff. Veteran and first responders, too. We've got Tunnel to the Towers run coming up.
Mm.
We've got the 10-miler for the
The
NAS
5,
JRB.
10, and so you can do the NAS JRB run. If you haven't signed up for that yet, they're doing a 5-miler for those that don't want to do a 10. they're doing the 10-miler, and they're doing a combined. So if you do both of them, you can walk away with 3 medals, and they're really pretty cool.
Wow.
So if you're a distance runner, you walk away with three distinctive little medals.
And the
So it's
skipper,
pretty cool.
he's going to have some static displays out there. This is kind of, we aren't doing an air show this year, but this is kind of a way that he can have the public come out there. They can run the race. But he did tell us at the Air Power Council meeting that, hey, we're going to have another air show coming up next year. So
Oh, good.
that's
And
exciting.
that run is actually on the flight line,
Yeah.
so they'll actually be running out there where the planes are. So they're going to see just lots of stuff that a lot of folks don't ever get to see. So it's a great opportunity. I'd encourage people to get out there and sign up for that. I know the skipper has it on his Facebook. We've put it on ours, and we'll put it on ours again to support everything that he's doing, because he's making a huge difference in the community.
Yes, he
He's
is.
really brought a lot more community and the base together. He's opened up the dining facility once a month
For veterans.
for veterans, ID
Oh.
card holders. If you're an
Oh,
ID
nice.
card holder, there's one day a month that you can go into the galley, as they call it. I know some folks call it a chow hall. We've always called it a dining facility. Whatever
Oh,
it
that's
is, you
right.
can go have lunch.
Uh,
And it costs you $6.15. Got to use a card, can't use cash. But if you're an ID card holder, keep your eyes out for that. We put that information out as well to support the efforts. And what he's
Absolutely.
trying to do is bring together the veterans with those currently
And-
serving.
And get the
And the community.
Good.
Get the
He's bringing
community.
the-
yeah, that's
And
great.
he's only got middle of the year next year.
Well, he thinks about the end of next year. So
Yeah.
hopefully whoever comes in behind him.
But he's really working on
Yeah.
getting the community together.
and the skippers, we had TJ or TD
TD Smyers.
Smyers.
Mhm.
He had been the skipper out there several years ago,
Right.
and he was really involved with the community and kind of passed the mantle on to the other skippers. So, the community involvement's a big deal, especially when they
Yes, it
start
is.
cutting back on funds and cutting bases. So,
Yeah.
but those are just some of the things. Another thing we've got coming up is Mary and I and Don will be in Dallas for, the city to the east for 2 days. One for a clay shoot,
Yeah, watch it.
a dinner that night, and the next day a golf tournament for Light Up to Live. The Freedom Mobility Foundation, I'm a board member of it. We've got a golf tournament in November. And then, of course, in November also, we got the Sky Ball. And in December, we've got holidays and heroes, when we're going to take a lot of gifts out to NASJRB and probably give gifts to at least 130 or more families.
Probably more need this year than ever with the economy
Yeah.
as
And,
it is.
and Thanksgiving, we got $45,000 that we donated, that Holidays and Heroes donated to the Tarrant Area Food Bank, and they're going to provide 450 Thanksgiving meals for our service people.
Nice.
A lot of great stuff going on
Yeah,
in
great.
the North Texas areas, in the Fort Worth area. Today, we're so excited to have BJ Pryor and Linda Wiese,
Hello.
Linda Lou,
Mhm.
and they're going to tell us some interesting stories. You've been around Roll Call for quite a while.
Yes.
You've come there and talked, and then we
Mhm.
see each other at different events. You
Mhm.
set your booth up, and you have a book. It's called Behind My Wings, and we'll have some information about Behind My Wings book. But it's just a fascinating thing to read your story, listen to your story, because it gives a whole different perspective to the Vietnam War
Mhm.
and to those service men and women that served over there, because so many times we just hear about Vietnam and the veterans and stuff,
Right.
but you were able to be, I think you said, the last smile from the United States
Yep.
that they saw, and then the first smile
Mhm.
back to the United States.
Right.
And you started in 69?
Well, I started with the airlines
Okay.
in '68,
Okay.
but after I came off probation, then I signed up for the military flights.
Okay, and that was the MAC, Military
MAC
Airlift Command?
Command, correct.
Okay.
Which is still operating today.
Okay, and that just shuttles the troops back and forth.
Right.
And you said that you and your husband figured out that during the time that you flew the MAC flights, that you flew over 70,000 of our servicemen.
Correct.
Most of
Wow.
them men. There were
I know,
some
it's
women,
a lot.
some nurses and support staff.
Well, we never had the nurses
Okay.
on board the aircraft. It was
It's just
totally
totally
the
men.
soldiers, and it was all males, and we had no females. But I knew we had female nurses, and in the military, yeah. So it's 69 was a big change in my life when I started doing that. You know, it's like didn't even know where Vietnam was. We had to get all the shots that you all had to get.
We got the shots, didn't we, Larry?
Yeah,
A lot of shots.
yeah.
Lot of shots.
Yeah, but the first thing I want to do is I want to thank you guys so much for roll call. It has been awesome to attend and listen to all the speakers and just the camaraderie and all what you do for the veterans. I'm really touched. I tell everybody about roll call. I do. You know, I went to my high school reunion just a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling them about you and how many you feed, and I said it's incredible. So thank you. I know it's a lot of work, but Linda and I definitely enjoy it so much.
You know, it's a real joy for myself and Mary and the other board members that we have to see how rich and deep and big it's grown.
Yes.
Because I mean, it's just not a numbers deal. It's deep in love and camaraderie for our veterans. And just the other day, whenever we were at Oshman's, to have those men around the table, you know, they started talking to each other, telling each other stories.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is at every table at roll call.
Yes.
But we appreciate you saying that. And
Oh,
we appreciate you coming.
Yes.
And that noise you hear in the background, there's a dental office behind us, and I think they're drilling. Now, they're doing some construction today, so just bear with us with that noise. It doesn't last
We'll
long.
try to be a little extra loud for you. Yeah. It might be hardest for PJ because she's a little bit more soft-spoken.
So,
All in the building.
It does, yeah.
tell us where you're from.
Okay, I was born and raised in California, and I went to Hawthorne High School. Just went back to my 60th reunion last weekend.
You must have started school very early.
Yeah.
To be
And actually, I started writing my book because of my high school classmates who went to Vietnam. That's where I started. When I went to my 50th high school reunion, I asked how many had gone to Vietnam, and they raised their hand. And so I walked up to them and I said, "Would you share your story with me?" And each one they did. And what was so special about going back at the 60th is I was able to get the lapel pins from roll call and the certificate because none of them had received it.
Oh,
And so, you know, with your permission, I was able to do a ceremony and give them and just, you know, thank them and honor them. And it brought tears to a lot of our eyes, you know. But I love veterans. When I started flying the military flights, you know, we were young. You know, you couldn't be married then, you couldn't have children, and all those restrictions, you know, on flight attendants. So I was in my 20s. I was 24 actually, and when we started transporting, the veterans were 18 and 19-year-olds, and they looked to me like to be my younger brother,
Sure.
you know. And taking them over, you know, each leg got us closer and closer to Vietnam. And on my very first trip, not even realizing the ramification of what I was doing, leaving them in Vietnam when we finally landed in Saigon on my first trip, I wanted to cry. So I went up into the flight deck and I let myself cry. And then I had a little talk with myself. Okay, if you're going to do this, there's no more crying. And I didn't.
That's a pretty big step for a 24-year-old.
Yes,
Right,
knowing that we're leaving them there, you know. And what hit me on the first one is how many am I going to see return?
Yeah.
That's what hit me, you know. And so anyway, so that was the beginning of it. And then of course in the 2 years, the company only wanted us to sign up for 1 year, but I signed up again for another. It was just hard to leave. I was so engrossed living and taking them into all these bases. I mean, we went all over Vietnam. Tan Son Nhut, which is Saigon, Cam Ranh Bay, Da Nang, which I hated to fly into, and Bien Hoa. And
So it wasn't just one place.
no, it wasn't just one
that,
place.
That was every place was a war zone.
Yeah, and just skipping around and telling you my story. Whenever we took off out of Vietnam, once the wheels went up, the guys, of course, would clap and shout. But for us, we just wanted to get a little bit higher to know that we were safe. And that was every landing and takeoff in Vietnam for those 2 solid years. Someone asked me, how many times did you land in Vietnam? And I said, I don't know, maybe 100. I don't know, And so anyway, and I love veterans and I love to tell their stories. And I still love to hear their stories. It's really good when they can talk to me about it and I can share. And when they tell me where they were in Vietnam, I know where it is and what we flew over and the terrain and all of that. So
whenever you flew over there, would you fly from the United States to Vietnam, or would you have layovers? Or
yes, all right. We operated out of California, all up and down. We would fly the empty aircraft to the bases, pick up the soldiers. We were the aircraft we were using was the 707, had 4 jet engines. Thank goodness, because every now and then we would lose an engine.
oh, no.
So I don't usually tell that to the public. and so we would pick up on the California side, and then the first leg would be Hawaii. We would get off. They would stay on the aircraft. And my first trip was 3 days on the beach of Waikiki, and I thought, maybe these trips aren't going to be too bad, So then the call came to go to Clark Air Force Base, which is no longer now.
That was in the Philippines.
Yes. Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. And so that was an 11.5-hour flight time from Honolulu to Clark. And that was a long flight. We served them 2 meals, and we did a lot of things because, in those days, there's no movies and no headsets, all of that. So we had 165 guys on the airplane and just 4 of us girls.
Wow.
Stewardesses in those days. Actually, we were called air hostesses way back in the beginning. So then we would land in the Philippines. They would stay on the airplane and we would get off. And our company took really good care of us on our layovers. And we were at a hotel right off of the base called the Oasis. And they catered to us totally. I mean, anything we wanted, we could, we wake up in the morning, put our bathing suits on and go by the pool. They'd bring us Bloody Marys. And so that's how it started that day, And then in the afternoon, we could get our hair fixed, manicure, pedicure for like $1.75. And so I always tell, people that because they treated us so well. They were taking care of us while we took care of the soldiers. And I kind of appreciated that, and especially when they cooked American meals for us, like a hamburger. A hamburger's a big deal, when you're not in country, or out. And then we would get the call to go into Vietnam. We never knew where we were going to go until that night when they would tell us. And so my first flight was in Saigon, and that was tough, like I just shared earlier. So that was the beginning, and just the beginning of 2 years that totally changed my life. And that's why I love the Vietnam veterans so much. Every time I meet them, I wear my hat, as often as I can with my jacket. You can see my jacket, I've got pins from the veterans. And
in your hat, it says, "Never forget
that's right.
Vietnam, always remember."
Mhm.
And that's an important thing to never forget,
That's right.
because
Right.
Vietnam wasn't a popular war.
I know it.
And,
I know it.
I think about World War One. When Johnny comes marching home, all the big parades, the ticker tape parades,
Yes.
and then World War II, and then Korea they didn't have a lot of fanfare.
Yeah, the Forgotten War. The guys
It
from
is,
the
really
guys from Korea
was.
say that they are the Forgotten.
Yes.
Right.
So
But
true.
Vietnam, there was all the protests going
Right.
on. There was all the name calling, and they didn't come home to open arms or parades or anything. They just
Mm-mm.
came home to a nation that, not the nation, but a faction of our country
Right.
hated them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was really hard on them. As I talk about it and write about it, they had their battles that they went through. And then I mentioned, they had no idea about the PTSD that they're going to experience when they come home.
And many of them don't even recognize that now.
Right. And that's why I like to talk about it.
Absolutely.
I address it. I share my own experiences from those 2 years, especially a neat thing that we flight attendants did is the flight going into the Philippines. If the soldiers didn't open up their carton of milk or their brownie, we took paper sacks and we would collect them all. And then as soon as we landed, and we'd been up almost like 20 some hours, and we'd have the driver drop us off at the hospital there. And we'd take those brownies and milk cartons and go from
To our
room to
servicemen
room.
that were there.
So I saw a lot of injuries, a lot of stuff. And anyway, so that was just something special that we do. And so that's why when I share with them, it was like 20 years. When I got married, my husband and I got married in 1975 and 1995. And I told him I flew the trips to Vietnam. I never shared my feelings, what I went through, my emotions, what I saw, what I didn't like. And I never shared any of that. So we went and saw a movie in 95, and it was Forrest Gump. And that movie just triggered everything in me, everything, not only from my childhood, but also from the war. And so when we were walking out, I was crying so much. My husband just had to hold on to me. He had no idea, he didn't, what's wrong? And I was able to say, okay, all that happened. I saw this. I remember that. I remember that soldier. I remember those stories. And then it's just like, it all came out. So that was a healing time for me, but look, it took 20 years.
Right.
And so when guys right now, even in my high school, share with me that they're still suffering a little PTSD, I said, let's talk about it. Let's talk. In fact, 2 nights ago, I was on the phone for a long time with one of the guys in California. And, God is the healer, and he healed me. And so that's why I like to share with them and say, okay, when you face that or when that comes on you, you don't have to stay there. Trauma doesn't have to control us. It happened. It's part of our life. You can't erase it, but it doesn't have to control you. And so I like to walk them through those emotions and those feelings. So, all right. So I'd always wanted to write about those 2 years of my experiences, and I flew for 40. But I love my career. I love the airlines. I love serving people. And before I tell you that, after the war, when the soldiers would be on our airplane on a domestic flight, if I knew they were a soldier, even if they were in uniform, I'd go, "What do you like to drink?" And we would give them something in a paper cup. Yes, that was just for those of us max dues, and there were thousands of us. We would always make sure that our guys on the airplane got a special, pat and drink and whatever else, wings and all that.
That's happened to me before.
Yes.
When I've flown, whether in uniform or not, if they picked up on that I was military, the flight attendants, some of them would do something a little extra, a little special.
Nice.
Yeah. So that tradition clearly has carried on.
Yeah.
Even though I retired a couple of years ago, but I flew for a lot of years teaching classes across the country for the Reserve Command. And so I spent a lot of time on planes, and a lot of time I would be in uniform.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And rightly so. Rightly so. We always need to treat our veterans special. And, and through roll call and other organizations that I've done, I step out of my little area, and always thanking soldiers. So when I wanted to write my book, it was after I retired. My parents lived with us for almost 10 years. And then after they passed away, and Linda, my co-writer, she's in the medical field, but she loves to write. She has a talent for writing. And so she knew I had the desire to write my book because I wanted to write some stories. I didn't want to forget them. I wanted to put them down. And so she and I worked really, really hard for 4 years. We probably could have finished it in 2.5 years, but we belonged to a writers club. I wanted expert helping. I wanted constructive, on how to write the book. And Linda came up with all the chapters in the book, which is perfect. Most people don't pay any attention to the chapters. When you open a book, you just want to start reading it, But she chose the chapters. We put it together. We pieced it together. And what you're seeing behind me, that's myself and my brother. I got to see him 3 times in Cameron Bay. And you don't think that wasn't special? When we landed in Vietnam, we didn't want anybody to get on the airplane. We were the ones that cleaned it when we came in, from usually Okinawa or Clark or wherever we were coming from. And when I was able to see my brother, the flight attendants, they said, go downstairs, we'll clean. And so they let me have 10 minutes max with my brother. And that was real special. And he did come back, but not without issues. He almost got killed, but like many of the guys there. So.
And so you and Linda were friends in California.
Yes.
And now both of you live here.
Yes. When my husband and I moved to Colorado, she moved with us. And then when we moved down here, she moved with us. We're like adopted sisters. We really are. My mom always introduced her as her adopted daughter.
Well, she's wonderful.
Yeah,
She likes to hide in the background.
Yeah,
She's wonderful.
she is. She is my
I'm the
biggest
back person.
support. And she organizes all the places where I can go and speak. And, it's amazing how God knew back when I was flying that I would be traveling now and on free passes. And she too is, and my husband, we all 3 can travel on free passes. And how easy it is for me if somebody calls me from another state, I can say, okay, I can be there.
That's cool.
That's good.
And
you do a lot of events.
A lot of
across the
events.
country.
Yes. I wish I had a list. I should have brought the list of the places that we're going to even next month. October's kind of busy for us, and November. We're flying back to Wisconsin to be at an event on Veterans Day. And so, and I don't just speak to veterans, although that's my priority, because it's my way of giving back to them, thanking them for their service. But I also go and speak to a lot of organizations, especially the retirement homes, because there's a lot of veterans in those retirement homes. And I get to thank them and tell them my side of the story. And you're right, my side of the story is so different, from you being a soldier and being there. And I don't take away from that. I'm just saying my perspective is different.
No, it just brings, I think probably it brings some closure to some of those veterans, to see you and know, hey, here's a human side to the brutality that I saw and everything, because these people served me as I was serving them.
Right.
And whenever you were taking them to Vietnam, was it kind of a somber mood for most of them?
Right out of boot camp on the California side, they were pretty happy, young, and just, like I'm here, they've got their brand new uniform on. They just came out of boot camp. And so they're good on that first leg. Hawaii to the Philippines, it started to get a little somber. And then definitely going into Vietnam, usually it was about a 3-hour flight time, and we got to serve them a meal, which I really loved. Give them their last good hot meal.
Some of them, the last good hot meal they ever had.
I know. When I read statistics about how many died the very first day they were in Nam, or how many died the last day they were there, it just breaks my heart. just breaks my heart, you know. Linda and I were in Savannah a couple of years ago, and we were just walking along the river there, and I got tired and I sat down on the stairs, and all I had on was my Vietnam hat. I didn't have anything else. It was so hot, and I was just sitting there, and this man walked up to me purposely and put out his hand and shook my hand, and he said, "I'm a Vietnam veteran." He said, and I was able to talk about it just 10 years ago. I wasn't
Wow.
able to do this, to come up and shake your hand and say thank you, because you were a veteran too. And then I would say, I wasn't a veteran, but I took you there. It's like, it's amazing because of what happened to them when they came back. And I have letters from presidents, from governors, honoring the Vietnam veterans, apologizing for the way America treated them. But, you know, the damage had already been done.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's like I said, God teaches us about forgiving. You got to forgive and let it go. Because if you don't forgive, it's just going to eat at you, you know.
And war it's a horrible thing.
Yes.
And I think that, I've heard two of my friends that were in Vietnam both tell me that, Rick, they turned us into animals.
Yes.
I mean, these young men were doing things that,
Yeah, they'd have never thought
that they never would have thought of doing. And one of my friends, I found out that he had been awarded the Silver Star.
Mm.
And I said, well, do you do a lot of stuff with veterans or anything? He said, no. He said, I am so ashamed of the things I had to do that I don't, he just kind of,
No. Unfortunately, it's a common story.
and he didn't want to talk too much about it. But the more we talked, he finally sent me a long writing of his experience,
Oh,
and it's like he
Good.
wanted somebody else to know
Good.
what he had been through.
Right.
But that adds to all the trauma and the mental things that these men
That's
have
right.
now.
That's right. When Linda and I took a little break from writing, and we wrote all day, and then I would type all night. I'd do it the old-fashioned way. I like to write, listen, to record. Well, it was one of her birthdays, one of her big birthdays, and so we went to Hawaii, and we thought, okay, we're taking a break. 2-3 days is all we were going to stay there, just relax, So we have our bathing suits on, and we're walking down to the beach, and we wanted to walk through this hotel because the entranceway through the hotel was at the beach. And we saw this dog, and you don't see dogs very much in Hawaii. And so Linda loves dogs, and I do too, but she more. And so she went over to pet it, and I did too. And of course, if there's any kids around there, they want to go and pet the dog too. So when I stood up, it was a Vietnam veteran. He was wearing his cap. And now I'm face to face with him. And I said, and I have my hat on. And I go, what years did you serve? He goes, 69, 71. I said, those were my years. And I just paused for a moment. I thought, we were in the midst of writing. We already had our stories. We weren't going to write here. And I said, can I write your story? And I, introduced ourselves. And Linda, I said, I'm writing a book right now. And he just had to think about it. And I didn't say anything. I just stood there and waited. And he said, okay, I'll share my story with you. He says, I've only shared it with one other person, and that was my psychiatrist. So I was the first person that he gave me his story. He was a medic.
Yeah, horrific job.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
my Lord.
And I did my best to write his story. And he's still alive. We still try to keep in touch with him. But I have pictures of soldiers waiting for the helicopter, to come down and get him. And with my classmates, and I was talking to the one guy a lot because he seriously has got a lot of PTSD. I said, well, how do you feel when you hear a helicopter? He goes, I feel good, because a helicopter to me is help is on the way. Help is coming.
That's a Bill Henry coming in to extract you.
Yes.
We have Bill on not long ago, so
and
we
yeah.
love to have him tell that story.
Love all the soldiers. Everybody had a part in that war, and in my book, I do speak about our favorites. I said, we were single. So we dated the Air Force, and we drank with the Army. We danced when we could with the Navy. I told this at roll call.
Yeah.
And kudos to the Coast Guards because we never saw them. We knew they were up and down the coast, but we never saw them. And then we loved the Marines. And nobody really asked me, why do you love the Marines? Well, there's a big difference with the Marines. I mean, when the Army came on, no offense, Army, I love you, but they'd come on and throw their stuff in and kind of get situated, but when the Marines came on, oh my gosh, they went all the way to the back, they filed in, they were just so perfect, and everything that they did and do. And so you can ask any MAC flight attendant, who was your favorite? And they'll all say the Marines.
Incredibly disciplined.
Yes.
Right? Now,
Yeah.
you at roll call told the story about how the things that you guys would do on the plane going over, entertaining and keeping their spirits up. And then you
Yes.
told the story of how you handled them as you brought them home. Would you share that with our audience? Because I think
Sure.
that's really impactful.
Sure. The fun things that we would do, the legs would be from Hawaii to the Philippines, 11 and a half hours, you got to think of something. Well, the company, when they hired us, our hair couldn't touch our collar. And a lot of us wanted to let our hair grow. So we wore wigs. It was no big deal. Many of us wore wigs. And so during the service, when we had all the trays out, we would call back one soldier and say, I need your help. And he'd come back always willing, to help us. The guys were so good. And I pull him in the galley and we'd say, well, okay, I'm going to do something fun. I'm going to take my apron off and put it on you. I'm going to put my wig on you. And I'm going to give you a pot of coffee. And I want you to go out in the aisle and pour coffee. And so that was real sweet. And it didn't last very long, but it was enough just to kind of get their minds off of them going. And yes, if anybody came on with a guitar, we encouraged them to play. Some of the other flight attendants had different games that they would play and just try to lift up their spirits, and always decorated the aircraft during the holidays. That was a definite, Christmas was probably the hardest time to be away in the Philippines or Okinawa or Thailand or Japan or Hawaii. Even Hawaii's kind of weird because there's nothing to really decorate. You don't see the Christmas like we have back here. So decorating the aircraft brought in a little joy. And so we always made sure we had fun. Oh, and the soldiers who couldn't sleep at night, and there were always some who just couldn't, they knew where they were going. So we would go walk through the aisle and call them back. Just come with me. And they always obeyed. They obeyed us so well. And we'd bring them to the back and we'd throw a blanket on the floor and play cards. We played cards for hours. Because see, in those days, we were not allowed to sleep. Today, if you flew an 11 and a half hour trip, you were allowed 2 hours of sleep, but those days. So anyway, they helped us and we helped them. And so that was the fun things that we would try to do. On the flights coming back, the guys tried to be okay, like, I'm okay. But they weren't okay. And so we never pushed them, but they would tell me how many in their unit were killed. They would tell me maybe they were the only ones that survived. And it hurt them to know that they survived and their buddy didn't. And to this day, they still hurt because they lost that buddy. And then I started really learning how important it was when you go to war, that the two soldiers or the group of soldiers, how important they are to each other, that their survival depended on you looking after me, vice versa.
Right.
And that kind of became it was a horrible war. I mean, I try to talk about some of the things that happened, but I don't really like to go there. It's just war is hell. And that's why when I share that with them and say, okay, talk to me, what'd you do there? And they do. So those are some of the things. Yeah, big difference. Big
And
difference.
you don't know the people's lives that you touched by getting them to do that first initial open up, because that might have kept them from keeping something in.
Mhm.
And with the massive number of suicides that we have per day
Yes.
within the veterans, even today,
Yes.
it's so high.
Yes,
We think it's undercounted, and it's just incredibly high.
I know it.
But by having them open up and talk to you when they were coming back, when you could see they were hurting, that might have been a first step in a journey that kept them here. So they may still be here today because of something that you did on one of those flights, bringing them home. We just don't know. We don't know how the Lord plans things or how he puts us out there to do his work. But you've clearly done his work, and it's been just amazing to hear the stories from your perspective.
But let me just tell you real quickly. After Vietnam, the lifestyle that we were living as MAC flight attendants, you know, we were flying into war zones, and we were single. Okay, so we partied hard and we drank a lot. And I understand why we did, because of what we were doing. It all, we would all as a crew get drunk together. I got it. It's like what we really are doing. This is kind of our release, let go, be a little crazy, go swimming, go to a beach, just try to do something to get it out of your mind. And so that lifestyle, after I transferred to domestic flights, I was still living that MAC lifestyle. And I had been invited to a party on the beach in Manhattan Beach. And when I went into this house, they had every kind of drug, I guess you would want. There was no alcohol. It was just drugs. And at that time, it kind of been introduced to me. And when I walked into this house, I thought, what am I doing here? This is not what I want. So I picked up my purse and I walked out. And I took off my shoes because it was right there on the beach. And I walked down to the beach. And my parents are deaf. They were deaf. So I was raised in a deaf home. We had no music, no TV, no phone. They didn't even know if I could hear because I didn't talk when I was a young child until I went to school. That's when I started talking. And of course, not ever going to church. When I walked down the beach, and here I felt so empty. I'd been flying 5 years, did the first 2 years of the military flights, still living a wild, crazy life. And I felt so empty and so alone and so heartbroken. And those are kind of the descriptions that I could say as I was walking down the beach. And I looked up for the first time and I said to God, are you real? And I said, 'cause I don't like it down here. I want to come home. Why I even said that, I don't get it. But at that moment, the ocean looked beautiful, the sky looked beautiful, and this huge peace just kind of came over me. And I know that peace was nothing I ever felt before. And I know that was the presence of God. And then there were some other things that took place on that beach. And so when I turned around, I heard this little voice inside of me for the first time, like saying, you will never be alone. And so I knew God had met me on the beach and he touched my life. I had never read the Bible. I'd never gone into church. So this was all new to me. Here I am, this, young, flight attendant. And so I went and bought a paperback book called Good News for Modern Men. And I share that every time I talk. And that introduced me. That was the New Testament. That introduced me to God. And then, God introduced me to Jesus. And I asked Jesus to come into my life because I didn't know that's what you had to do. And then Jesus introduced me to the Holy Spirit. And it's the Holy Spirit that's been guiding me and directing Linda and I and opening up all these doors for me to go and speak to them. So he took time, but he healed me of all my trauma, all my PTSD. And even now when it tries to come back on me, I just remind it, no, God healed me of that. You're not coming back at me. So that changed my life. The veterans, flying the Vietnam flights and having a relationship with God totally changed my life.
Wow.
And
Yeah, it's very powerful. She
Yes.
told it at roll call, and I don't think you could have heard a pin drop, and you could have heard a few tears drop too
mm,
when she told the story.
mm,
And you know, our biggest crowd at a roll call luncheon is Vietnam veterans, and they could tell how much she really means what she says and how much she really cares, because it's that her heart. She's a part of that, even though she wasn't military. We consider her a veteran because
yeah,
she was
so sweet.
just the same as ever. She was putting herself in danger every time she flew those missions in and out with those guys, and what she did for them was so powerful, and we're so grateful.
Well, I'm grateful to them. So I'm grateful.
I read that you were issued an ID as a second lieutenant in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And that was in case you got captured or
Or shot, which, like, really? Okay. So they gave us an identification card and we had to carry it with us at all times. But what I liked about it, what I shared before, is we could go on the officers club and the base, and
Right.
I learned how to play tennis, and I learned, about drinking, really, because I wasn't much of a drinker.
Yeah,
till I flew
the military
back.
will teach you how to drink. That is for sure.
They did, So every time I go into a base, or to a club, I could have a drink. And like I always share, I don't ever remember paying for a drink in those 2 years. So the guys always took care of us female flight attendants. Yeah.
what you said a while ago about your parents, both of them were deaf,
Mm-hmm.
and I never have thought about a child being raised by deaf parents.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any support from your grandparents where you were around people that would talk to you? Or
My mother's mother was Spanish, and she only spoke Spanish. And I did live with her for a while. So I could understand Spanish, but I don't speak it. So my first language was sign language, naturally.
you still do it fluently?
Yeah, even though my parents have been gone a long time. Yeah, I still use my language. Sometimes when I sit on my bed at night, getting ready to go to bed, I don't feel like talking, so I'll sign to God, and I'll just tell him how much I love him and thank him for my day.
That's so beautiful. Sometimes when I see those people that do the signs at church and stuff and sing the songs.
Yes, I love that.
And all the movements and all the things. And I mean, it's just, you can just watch it. And even though I don't understand it, you know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Don Graves' daughter, one of his daughters is deaf. The one that comes to the
really?
luncheon.
No.
She's deaf. And she
Oh, wait.
Debbie.
I have met her. Yes.
Debbie, yep. And she reads lips really well. It was
Really?
like,
Yes.
I had no idea at the beginning
I can
she
too.
was deaf. I was
talked
like,
to her, and she-
are you kidding? But she is,
Yes.
she is just, she is
Yes.
on Facebook,
We
and
got
she
to sit with her.
she
Yeah.
IMs me, and she puts stuff out there all the time, and she sends me stuff that she's doing,
Great.
and she's just
Great.
so involved in everything.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
She's IM me and said, I can't be at roll call this week because I'm working at the church.
Right. She
Mm.
works at the church a lot. She does a lot of really good work.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And tell me her name.
Debbie.
Debbie. Okay. Debbie. Yeah, I want to remember that because I did meet her. We did meet her once. Yeah, but I didn't know she was Don
Oh,
Gray's
she's so,
daughter.
Yes, and she's so sweet.
Oh.
She is so sweet.
Yeah. Pieces coming together.
Yeah, I always tell her how much I love her. I give her a hug every time and tell her I love her. 'Cause she's just so
How many
wonderful.
children does Don have?
He has 4. One of his has passed, but he lives with one of his daughters. Debbie doesn't live far, so she will come over a lot. And I think he said 17, this newest grandchild named after him, was number 7, our great grandchild.
Oh.
17 great grandchildren.
Wow.
I can't remember how many
Wow.
grandchildren,
A lot.
but he's got
Right.
17, and the
Right.
youngest of the great grandchildren was named after him.
Wow.
This sign, this sign?
Yeah.
I love you. That means I love you. So you can always do that to Debbie.
One
I did
story
remember.
I'd like you to talk about, and Tyler, if you could find the picture of the flight attendant that's sitting there with the guy with the flowers,
Oh, yes.
because that's such an interesting story,
Yes.
and you shared
Yes.
this experience with roll call.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we've got about 10 more minutes, but
Okay.
let's really, I love that story.
Yeah.
And we've got the picture up here.
Oh, yes. Okay. It is a great story. During the military flights, we always took photos of the guys, and they would say, I want to send that to my mom, and they'd give us their mom's address, and we'd develop it and send it to them. So this has been a famous photo among all of us. Gloria is her name. Of course, we don't know who the soldier is, and they're just leaving Hawaii because going to Vietnam. And so we've had this picture, and about 9 years ago, my husband and I moved into a new neighborhood, and Linda and I were still writing our book, and this neighbor was walking his dog. His name is Paul Raby. And we got to know him. I found out he's a Vietnam veteran, and I said, Paul, we're writing a book. Could we write your story? He said, well, I didn't do anything, but he had a very important job. He could fix anything he could fix, all the equipment that they used out in the fields, the jungles, the war. So that's what he did. And they took good care of him, making sure that he could be safe wherever he went to fix the thing. Okay, so because Linda and I have been traveling, and I've been speaking on the radio and television, and there's been quite a few, my husband put together a little video, and he had that photo in there, and he says, I'm going to take this over to Paul and just show Paul, what you've been doing. And so he did, and that picture came up, and Paul goes, wait a minute, that's me. And we're going, no way could that be you. He goes, and his wife went and got his photos of him in his uniform. Sure enough, that's him. That was him. That's him. Yeah. So I called Gloria. Gloria lives in Houston. I said, Gloria, you are not going to believe this. I said, our neighbor, the guy that you sat on his lap going to Vietnam, we made the connection. It's him. She goes, no. And so it was during COVID. So we had to wait a year before she could fly up. And we called Channel 8, the news. They were so good. They brought their cameras. They did everything. They set it up, and they had the interview inside our house. And we met them. So we're talking 50 years, when he was flying over there, and she was the flight attendant sitting on his lap. And it was so cute.
And you happen to have his picture.
Yes. Right, and I mean, there's a God thing. We call it a God wink story, because God knew 50 years ago when he was going to Vietnam that he was going to be a neighbor of ours and be in the book, There is another story I'd like to tell real quick, if I could. Sure. Okay. I was speaking in Dallas at a VFW, and after I was finished, a Marine came up to me, and he handed me his business card, and he said, we need to talk. And so I gave him my card, and he gave me his. And the very next day, he called me. He said he had a story to tell me. And I told Linda was just walked in the house. I said, start recording, because I know this is going to be a good story. And he said, when I came back from Nam, he said, I was totally messed up, really bad. He said, drinking, just bad. And he said, but then God got a hold of me. And I don't know exactly when this happened, but he says, God got a hold of me, and I joined an AA. He says, in fact, I still belong to it here in Dallas. He says, there's just about 20 of us guys, and we meet there once a week. And he said, in comes this young kid with ponytail. Remember what I told you I loved your ponytail? I came in with a ponytail. Yes, I did. I love the story. And he had, some rings somewhere on his face or ears. And this Marine telling me, his name is Bob, he said, I just kind of rolled my eyes. And I thought, oh, okay, so he comes in the meeting, and then during the meeting, this young man stands up, and we're saying he's 50 or 60 years old. And he said, I live in, where was it? Longview. I drove here from Longview, 2-hour drive, purposely to stay drunk this weekend. I've been sober for 6 months, but I was losing it. I needed to just drink. And so he said, but I saw the door, I saw your sign, and I thought, I need to be in here. And so the guys are going, yes, you made the right decision. So then afterwards, when they're finished with their meeting, they go to a little cafe and they have lunch. So they all went there, and they never know how many guys are going to come there. So they pull their tables together. Well, right across from the Marine that's telling me the story, he says an empty chair. And he says, and in comes this young man. And he says, I just said a little prayer. I said, Lord, help me be kind, you know. And so he comes in, sits down. Well, this Marine's wearing his Marine jacket. And so the young man says, so you're a Marine, huh? And he goes, no, I just like wearing this, you know, and they all kind of laugh. And he said, oh, my dad was a Marine. And he says, but he was killed in Vietnam. And now I'm saying, do you know much about your dad? He goes, no, he was a baby. No, I don't. He said, all I knew is he was there in 65. He jumped off helicopters and he jumped off of submarines. And Bob's saying, that's what I did. I was there in 65. And he goes to this kid and he goes, tell me your full name. And he did. And he said, it was your dad's name, Shelton? And he goes, yes. And he goes, your dad died in my arms.
Oh my God.
And it's like, you know, and this Marine telling me the story, he says, nobody can tell me there is no God. He said, from Vietnam, I moved here to Dallas. Here's this kid, Longview, drove here to Dallas and found our little corner where we meet at. And he said, and since then they've become buddies.
Wow.
He's helped him to stay sober, got an apartment. It's been really good. That to me is one of the most awesome stories, you know, because here this Marine is so open to tell me he was a mess after Vietnam. And so was I. So, yeah.
Wow.
Well, your
Holy
book's
cow.
got many more stories in it. And how can people get your book? Larry handed us that book. Right?
Yes.
You can go to my website, behindmywings.com.
Okay.
And if you order from my website, I'll sign it to you. But there are other places you can buy it too. So,
Okay. So it's behindmywings.com is the website.
mhm.
And this book, that's you with your brothers.
Yes.
You were telling us the story about.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And just tremendous stories we've heard today. And, you know, we're just so appreciative of you and Linda and all your work
Yes.
to get the book done.
Yes.
The
And
silent
then-
partner.
Yeah.
And
Solid
then
partner.
to share the stories and touch the lives
Yes.
again. You know, the 70,000 lives you touched. And now you're touching thousands and thousands and more lives,
Mhm.
telling the story and bringing a different viewpoint from Vietnam.
Mhm.
Because, you know, I've thought about it, and I'm sure Larry's thought about it, because Larry and I were in the Army about the same time.
Oh, you were?
But we didn't go to Vietnam. But I think about all those guys, 50 or 60 guys in my unit that we went through basic together.
There you go.
And how many of them that went to Vietnam came home alive, and how many didn't? Well, of 70,000 servicemen that you took care of, part of those going, part of them coming,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of those going might not come home.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me tell my story.
Oh,
You know,
Yes,
I
you gave that to me.
yeah, that, and I've got a book for each of you too. I didn't know if you had my book.
No, I don't.
I did.
You do? Did I sign it to you?
I can't remember.
All right. All right. Yeah.
I'll take
for
another one because then I could share the other
Sure.
one.
Okay. Okay.
But the thing that I think about when I think of you telling your story is Rick said, how many people that you've touched. Is, you know, you throw that pebble in the water and it just spreads, and we encourage, and part of what we are always trying to do with roll call and anything that we do is tell your story, no matter if you think it matters or not, no matter if you think it's important.
Right.
People fixing equipment, yes, that's important.
Yes.
Because that enables the warfighter to go on and continue. So it doesn't matter what you did, your story matters. And the more that we tell those stories and the more we share them, the more that those ripples spread out and become waves. And we just touch more and more and more lives. And that's really what it's about. And that's really what roll call is about.
Yeah, it
is
is.
how can we impact people's lives and make them understand that everyone every single one of them and every story is important
Right.
and it matters.
Right. And after hearing Lucky, this
Wow.
last roll call, 102 or 100?
100.
100. I told Linda, I said, well, if God keeps me longer, I said, I'll just keep talking. I'll
Keep
just keep
talking,
going
telling
around
people.
and talking to all the, the veterans.
And there's so many people out there that help us share stories, just like Larry.
Right.
Larry,
Thank you, Larry.
put this together,
Thank you.
and this is our 13th episode to hear stories, reaching out to more people, so
Right.
more people know about our hometown heroes and the special people
That's what it is.
like you and Linda that have done so much to go tell other people's stories and share your life stories with people.
Mhm.
So this has been just an amazing hour that we spent,
Thank
and
you.
we just appreciate you all so much. And you can reach out to BJ and Linda
Mm-hmm.
at behindmywings.com if you've got a group that
Yeah.
would like to talk to her about speaking.
Mm-hmm.
She'd be glad to do that.
Be happy
sure
to.
and go there and order a book.
Right.
And
I don't charge for veterans. I don't charge any fees when I go and speak to veterans.
I've got a large group in Tel Aviv, Israel, 142, that either they've been here, maybe went to TCU or their parents or something, and they're
Uh-huh.
back there. And last Saturday, I got a phone call, and it was one of them was here in the States, and he said, I just wanted to tell you, we tune in to the hometown heroes that you share on your deal. Now they know how to do it direct. And he said, because they're in that battle every day.
Mm.
Right.
And he was telling me how his wife had to, they network. She would call somebody 2 blocks over. Is that street safe to go to the market?
Wow.
And that's their way of life.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and he said all the veterans that come on there, we can relate to those
absolutely.
because
Yeah.
we're in a war every day.
Yes, we
Yes.
are. Well, we just keep praying for our veterans.
Yes.
That's what we do, just keep praying and keeping them safe. I ask the Lord always to put angels around our service men and women and just cause confusion in the enemy's camp. That's
Yes,
my
absolutely.
prayer, in Jesus' name. Keep those guys and women safe.
Well, we've enjoyed having you all here.
Thank you.
And like I said, this has been a great show.
Great
We
show.
appreciate Larry, and he helps fund this program, and his museum, it gets funded too by his business, which is Classic Auto Detail, and he does an amazing job cleaning cars, cleaning RVs, whatever you got, even those Airstream trailers, you shine those up like
Yeah,
like they're brand new.
right.
So we appreciate you, Larry.
We
And
appreciate
roll call
y'all.
is going to be the 28th.
28th, I do believe,
Okay.
and Dwayne Williams, who was a guest on the show not too
Yeah.
long ago, Vietnam vet, will be
Yeah.
our guest
Yeah.
speaker that day. So, and we're working on a few others to come, but still just plugging away.
What is the RSVP deal now?
Well, we haven't.
Is
We'll
it
put
still the old system?
right until we're having some conversations and trying to determine that, but we'll open up the RSVP about the middle of the month, and at that point we'll know whether we're going automated via online or we're doing the old-fashioned email way. So
And-
we'll know here in another week or so.
And next week, our special guest is going to be Chuck Hodges. And Chuck's done thousands of interviews with all kinds of veterans, World
Yes.
War II, all the way up to active duty.
Mm.
And he just does an amazing job. And I thought, he probably just spends an hour or so, but in talking to some people that have been interviewed, it's 4 or 5 hours and sometimes several days.
Yeah,
So,
sometimes.
and he does this for the families. So
Right.
these guys
Oh,
can leave
nice.
their stories with your family.
That's
So
great.
it's going to be an amazing show next week.
Yep.
Well, this has been a great holiday, not holidays. I've got holidays and heroes on my mind, but this has been a great hometown hero show. BJ and Linda, thank you so much.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
thank
Happy
you.
birthday,
You're welcome.
Dusty.
Yes.
Larry, thank you.
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Mary, we'll see you next week, if not
Yeah.
before.
Absolutely.
See y'all
Bye.
later.
See y'all later.